Hi, and welcome to Journey Forward with Jory Rose, where you will gain insights, tools, and inspiration to get unstuck and live your best life. Jory is a licensed marriage and family therapist with a passion for helping people cultivate awareness and authenticity so they can show up fully in all aspects of their life. And now, here's Jory.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to Journey Forward with Jory Rose. I am so looking forward to my conversation with my friend Joanna Kleinman, who I know we could just talk for hours if given the chance, but I also know what she's going to share is going to be really valuable for you also. Joanna, welcome. And
thank you.
Please just introduce yourself and let everyone know what it is that you do and how do you show up in the world?
That's great. Thank you so much for having me today. So I am a psychotherapist, and I just launched a book in November of 2020 that's #1 Amazon bestseller. I'm very proud of it.
Woohoo!
Yay!
And
I have a podcast, and I just work with people all around the world. And my passion is really to help people understand how to manage their minds to design lives they love. That's why
you and I are so aligned, right?
Right. That's right.
No accidents that our paths have crossed. So first off, congrats on the book. Such a huge accomplishment.
Thank you.
Tell us right off the bat, what is the book? Where can people get it? Let's just plug this because I know how exciting that is to be marketing a new book.
Absolutely. Thanks. So yeah, it's called Dethroning Your Inner Critic, the 4-step journey from self-doubt to self-empowerment. And you can find that on Amazon.
That is fantastic. So the 4-step journey from self-doubt to empowerment. Wow. I don't know of anyone who couldn't benefit from learning those 4 steps.
Yeah.
Because unfortunately, with this human mind of ours, our inner critics can be pretty loud. So what was your journey that got you here? And then I really would love to hear what those 4 steps are.
Great. Yeah. So I've really been on my own self-awareness journey. I'm going to say since the age of 19. I think it's before that, but really, I just turned 50. So that's a long journey.
Yeah.
And I really do believe that we're always on a journey and we're always growing and learning and evolving. And the work of dethroning your inner critic came out of not only my personal journey, but also working, with people and their minds for, over the past 2.5 decades. And what I really, what came out of this is that we've got this automatic voice in our minds that speaks to us all day long. In fact, research says 50,000 times a day, which is pretty mind-blowing, right? And so it's just like our bodies breathe for us, our bodies make our hearts beat, our minds just go. They're conditioned to go to the same thoughts over and over and over again.
Damn little minds of ours.
Oh my God. And this is where our suffering comes from, right? Yeah. So many people try to change the circumstances of their lives to change how they feel. And I think, right, and this is why the work that you and I both do in the world is so aligned, because it's never the circumstances themselves that create our feelings. It's our thoughts about the circumstance.
100% agree. I think that's like the big aha moment that so many people don't really recognize the simplicity of. We try to change externally to impact how we feel internally. Yeah. But, that's like the old adage, wherever you go, there you are. The new big fancy house on the hill isn't going to get rid of your depression and loneliness unless you change something on the inside, right? We can continue to chase it. And it's going to be that elusive, thing we can never quite catch unless we recognize, oh, wait, it's up here. It's inside of me.
Yes. And I think that, even prior to this crazy year we've had, right, in 2020, I feel like we've been conditioned as a culture to keep striving, right? Keep achieving that goal. And we are just now waking up to how much chronic dissatisfaction and anger and discontent it's that's really been building for a very long time. And I think that it's like finally we're waking up to that we have to learn to think using an entirely different mind, or else we're going to keep producing more of the same.
I resonate with that. I mean, obviously professionally, but personally so deeply, because I lived so much of my early life just chasing what was next, and thinking and hoping as soon as I achieve that next level of my life development, then I'll be happy.
That's right.
And all I was left with was more discontent. Now, that's not to say I wasn't grateful for what I had or happy with what resulted, but it didn't fix like that internal itch.
Yes.
Of like, wait, something is still off.
Yes. And I think that what happens, and I really think this is for most human beings, right? We get to a point in our lives where we have checked the boxes, right? We've actually achieved the things that we set out to do. And we get this sort of smack in the face. Wait a minute. Here I am at the top of the mountain, right? I spent all this time climbing this mountain only to realize, wait a minute, I still feel the same way, right? Yeah. And so that is the wake up call. And I think that at that point, right, it's like there's two kinds of people in the world, right? Either you're going to look at yourself and take ownership and accountability and responsibility for how you're thinking, right? That's impacting how your life is going. Or you're going to keep blaming people,
pointing those fingers, externalizing.
That's right.
Did you have in your own journey getting there? Because it sounds like a lot of these reflections obviously is what you've experienced in your career as a therapist. Yeah. Did you have that awakening in your own life in which you like had, I mean, so you've been on that spiritual path of growth and awareness since you were 19, but was there something, that really gave you that aha moment to say, wait a second, you mean there's a different way I can go through my life? Like that's possible?
It's a great question. So I always talk about this. I talk about this in my groups and my podcast. The two biggest areas I'll say where my inner critic shows up the most are my business and raising my 3 children, who are now teenagers, right? And so what I didn't realize for a very long time is that, I had a lot of goals and a lot of expectations. And I love going for my goals, right? I love creating and right. I mean, I'm, as you said, right?
I can see it in your face right now. You just kind of lit up. Yeah, I can see that.
Totally. Right. I mean, you and I both launched books recently, right? It's a huge accomplishment.
Huge. Yeah.
Which is wonderful, but it's the attachment, right? That action that I'm taking has to produce this exact result. Right. And so I think that for a long time, I was having expectations, attached to expectations. That's what I call our inner critic's demands. And sometimes they're even our inner critic's addictions. Right. So it's like, if you think about an addiction is, I want that thing to either give me pleasure or have me avoid pain.
Yeah.
And so we get addicted to whether it's, I want people to think this way of me. I want to make sure that I never fail at anything. I want to make sure I'm never rejected. I want to make sure that I look this way. I want to make sure that I accomplish these goals because that's going to be the thing. And then we try to control all of these things that we can't control.
Yeah.
So like raising my children, okay, here I am. I'm a psychotherapist, right? My whole life is devoted to helping people to live their best lives, okay? But when it comes to raising children, okay, like they're going to go through their own pain. They're going to go through their own journey, right? And I used to think it was my job as their mom to always be teaching them how to live their best life. So when they were struggling or they were in pain, well, I would try to fix it.
Yeah.
Which didn't go so well, right? Because when I couldn't fix it, then I felt like I wasn't good enough, right?
Yeah.
And then it would be this sort of vicious cycle of like, what's wrong with me? What's wrong with them? What's wrong with them? And then there's something wrong with me, that there's something wrong with them. So it's just been a real, a whole journey for me, a whole awakening to, if I just keep taking the next action and surrendering my own automatic attachments, my inner critic's attachments and demands to where that action is supposed to go.
Yep.
And I just allow it to go where it's going. That's how I can live a life of freedom and joy and abundance.
And contentment.
Yes. Yes.
Right. And I would also venture to add on to that greater ability for resilience and adaptability.
100%. Yep.
100%. Because in absence of that outcome looking a particular way, you're good no matter what. That's
right. That's right. I mean, I'm going to tell you, right, with all the stuff that 2020 brought, right? And you can appreciate this as a mom, right? I mean, gosh, the watching our children, I don't know about your children, but my children have literally been out of school since March of 2020, right?
Yep,
it's now January of 2021. Like they have not stepped foot in school, right? And so, but my ability to just allow this to be part of their journey, right? With whatever it is and whatever it isn't, and just letting go of the way it's supposed to look. I've been able to deal with it better. I can see them, that they are able to bounce back from it. And it just creates a freedom and ease no matter what the circumstances are.
You know, one of the ways that I like to look at it, and there's so many different areas I want to take this conversation, so I'm just going to come with what's first coming to mind, is I love to consider the thought, what if this is the way it was supposed to unfold?
That is so beautiful.
Like, what would happen if we actually believed that 2020 uncovered everything we were supposed to learn about ourselves, even though it looked like a shit show on the outside?
Yes.
You know, but like, how might you differently react to these expectations not being met when you're like, oh, wait, I wasn't supposed to do these things. I wasn't supposed to be in school this year. I wasn't supposed to do that travel or that retreat or whatever it is.
Yes.
And like, talk about freedom.
Oh
right?
My goodness. Yes. You know, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, you go ahead. And then I'll go.
Well, this is the way that I think of it. Okay. Because it wasn't just that we were hit with the pandemic, right? We were hit with the pandemic. We were hit with the social unrest, the political unrest, the economic unrest, right? And we have to think that all of these forces are in some way coming together, right? Because each one individually wouldn't have been enough to wake us up collectively as a culture to really what we need to be woken up to.
I completely agree. So one of the questions I have for you, and I'm most certain that I am not the only one who has had this experience, but oftentimes the voice inside my mind, I've had to learn to differentiate whose voice is it actually.
Yeah.
And so I look to, and I've done a lot of work in releasing my transgenerational trauma, of which there's a lot, both, you know, being Jewish, there's collective trauma in you know, in my DNA, but my family of origin has a lot of tragedy in it. And to differentiate, like, whose criticism or whose voice am I carrying and attaching to certain situations? And one of my aha moments of recognizing that voice inside my mind that you're talking about, I was flying home from New York in the summer of 2013. coming back from a life-changing retreat that I was on at the Omega Institute with my favorite spiritual teacher, Dan Millman. And for those who don't know Dan Millman, he wrote the book Way of the Peaceful Warrior, although my favorite book of his is called The Laws of Spirit. Anyhow, I was on this JetBlue flight that was grounded on the tarmac for 5.5 hours.
Wow.
Because at LaGuardia Airport, I was just flying out of JFK. At LaGuardia, there was a hard landing of a Southwest plane, which meant the wheels didn't come down. So it landed on its belly. It didn't crash per se, but the FAA considered it a crash. So the whole airport was shut down. So all of the LaGuardia flights were being diverted to JFK, combined with a rainstorm. So like, it was like as much as could go wrong, right? So they had too many planes and nowhere to put them. And because it was a JetBlue flight, everyone had live TV going. And on everyone's live TV was the news of the other airport.
Oh, wow.
Being raised with anxiety as part of our collective belief system that this is just who we are, right?
Yeah.
Fear and anxiety was just a way of being that I was working at detaching from that mindset. The old me would have literally like run off the plane. I don't care if the doors were closed and I was on the middle of the tarmac. I would have found my way off that plane because the amount of anxiety of watching this crash would have like put me through the roof because my voices in my mind would have been unstoppable.
Yes.
But because I had been practicing awareness of my thoughts and how I was relating to the situation, and I had just come from this amazing life-changing retreat, I was in the right mindset to respond differently to this situation.
Yeah.
But my mother, who's very worrisome, as many Jewish moms are,
Sure.
but it was about 5 hours into my 5.5 hour delay, I realized I should call her and let her know I haven't taken off yet. And as soon as I call, she starts freaking out like, Jory, why are you calling? Like, you should be in the air right now. So just me calling was anxiety provoking for her, right?
Sure.
And I said, we haven't even taken off yet. I've been sitting on the tarmac for 5.5 hours. Like, the airport's closed, this crash, blah, blah, blah. And her response was so simple. And let me tell you, Joanna, it literally was like the click in my mind I needed to disengage from my old pattern.
Wow.
She said something so simple. She goes, oh my God, Jory, you must be so frustrated. And I realized in that moment, to no fault of her own, maybe a little bit, to no fault of her own, I had not known how to differentiate how I felt about things from how she felt about things. I didn't know how to differentiate who I was separate of my now ex-husband. Like I was so conditioned to take on these beliefs and patterns of the people I was closest with.
Yes.
But in that moment of my awareness, I was like, wait, no, Mom, like that's how you would deal. And I actually said to her, you know what, Mom, it is a really frustrating situation.
Yeah.
And I'm fine.
Yeah.
I was not frustrated at all because quite frankly, I wasn't ready to go home yet. So to me, this was a gift of 5.5 hours for me to keep journaling about my weekend.
Right. Right.
And so like, it's these subtle moments that I think what we can be tuned into to let that inner voice have an option to be something different.
Yes. So, I created, I wrote my book about a method that I created called the Mind Method. And it speaks exactly to what you're talking about, right? So MIND is an acronym. And the M step is meet your inner critic, right? So it's really leaning into, right? We want to run away from, right, the thoughts that make us feel uncomfortable. We want to distract ourselves or numb ourselves or, right, do something to get rid of them. But what if we just, instead of running away from them, what if we just examined them, right? So like really, like what is floating around up here? The I step is investigate the indication signs. So the indication signs are those blinking red lights, right? Like to your point, frustration, anger, wanting to eat an entire chocolate cake, right? Exhaustion, right? Wanting to, scream at your kids, whatever it is. your own particular indication signs to alert you, oh, that's my automatic mind. That's not
That's
me.
just the habit, right?
It's just the habit. So like it, right, for you, like to your point, like if your mother were to say that to you before you had the awareness of really looking at your thought, right? Just her saying that might have triggered automatically, right?
Yeah, I am really frustrated. This is horrible.
Exactly, right? That's your indication sign. Now, in the end step is neutralizing the never-ending message. Because when you said, you know, you always just took on what your mother felt or what your ex-husband felt or what other people felt, right? There's something underneath that, right? It's like there was something that you were maybe trying to fulfill or accomplish or overcompensate for. And when we can really distill down, what has our automatic mind been telling us for forever?
Yeah.
Right? I had a 6-year-old, right? Mine is, I'm not good enough, right? I had a 6-year-old version of it. I had a 17-year-old version of it. I had a 34-year-old version of it. I have a 50-year-old version of it. But I know now when it speaks to me, right? It's not real. So to your point, and that's what I think you did on the plane. It's you saw your mind, right? You saw, oh, wait a minute, that's not me, right? I can see that mind has been hooking me for forever, but that's right. I'm separate from that mind.
Yeah.
And then we can actually unhook from that automatic voice. We don't have to change that voice. We just unhook from it in the moment. And the D step is now design your life in a totally different way. So here you are in a, you know, what would have been a stressful, uncomfortable, painful, you know, anxiety.
I'm most certain the old me would have ran off the plane, rented a car, and been home in 6 days. I was not going to fly home.
Exactly. It's such a beautiful example. In that moment, you were able to unhook from the old voice that was still like saying what it said.
Literally. Yeah. And I've shared this example and I love that framework. It's such a beautiful map.
Yes.
And, you know, I shared that example and I've shared that with like so many clients because sometimes I think, and correct me when what your experience is, but I think people believe that these aha moments have to be these really big life-changing situations to recognize this. And this was like an everyday conversation I would have had with my mom. Like it was not significant in terms of its bigness. It was like a one sentence and it was just, oh, wow, look at that. Look how I automatically would have not only believed it, but taken it on as my own and have been so enmeshed in her mind's story, right?
Yeah.
Which again, that transgenerational piece comes in for me because this is not like this individual thing I'm carrying, right? This is like layers upon layers.
Absolutely. You know, if you boil down all 8 billion of us on the planet or however many we are, right? You know, that never ending message that I was talking about, we all fall into like one of 10 different categories. Like I want to talk about pain getting passed from generation to generation. And you are so right that it is the moment by moment, just awareness of what's this thought? How is it making me feel? Right. And when I feel that way, what are the typical behaviors that I engage in that have been producing the same results? So when you choose different thoughts, you evoke different emotions, which has you taking different behaviors, which has your results showing up differently. And that's a small example, but it's an enormous example.
It's huge. It was everything. It was huge. And and for me, for many years, I didn't know that I was even able to differentiate myself from those thought patterns. And I think that's a very common experience for many of us, right? That we feel, because we truly are what we think, right?
our thoughts literally create the reality that we're living in.
Yeah.
Right? Most people think my circumstances determine how I feel about myself and how I experience my life. Nope. It's all our minds.
It's all how you're relating to it. I get really, really nitpicky on language because I think the language that we speak to ourselves in our own minds, as well as out loud, holds a lot of power. And so, it's this inner language. And, I will kind of guide clients in how to be more clear in even labeling the things, because it's in that labeling that's going to impact how we relate to it.
Absolutely. We're not taught how to think.
Mm-mm.
It is the single most important education we could ever have. If you know how to manage your mind and intentionally think, in my opinion, you've won the lottery of life.
Mm-hmm.
And yet, this is not something we should be teaching this in schools, right? Starting at the very beginning.
Yeah.
And it's not mainstream the way that it needs to be.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And yet, I because you also said, how many different iterations of that inner critic self for you showed up at different ages. It's not a one and done process. Like, you're going to have to go through that mind map a gazillion times, and that's okay.
Yes. And I want to say the way that I define the inner critic, right? It's not just the voice of criticism. You're not enough. You need to be more, do more, fix this, change that, perfect this. Okay. We also have to look at the flip side of that, because the flip side of it is, oh, look, I did accomplish this goal, right? Oh, look, I wrote my book. That book makes me good enough, because that just is a setup. If that's what I need, right? Or oh, look, you do love me. Or, oh, look, I did lose the weight, whatever it is. If that's what you need, then you're just going to be chasing and chasing and chasing. And it's a pendulum where it goes from, oh, look, I really am good enough, to, oh no, now I'm not good enough. And we want to be living our lives not in that pendulum, but in the middle, where we can be content and at peace with who we already are.
Yeah.
And what our lives already look like. And it's not, right? It's not that we don't want to keep creating, because that's a beautiful thing, to keep creating and growing and reaching for goals. But if you are creating your goals from a place of already knowing that you already have everything that you need, that you already are enough, that you already live an abundant, beautiful life, not a perfect life, right? There'll always be pain. There'll always be failure. There'll always be rejection, but you're okay. That's a completely different life.
Yeah.
Moving forward.
Well, and I think it's really hard because our society, and we are raised in a culture in which we are being produced by outcomes that determine our worth, right? Whether, I mean, look at our kids are close to the same age, right? So getting into college, right? Where your worth is defined by a number or an acceptance on, in a particular way. And I've really worked hard at raising my girls of, look, that does not determine who you are in any which way, shape, or form. And I happen to have what I believe confident kids, because I actually really believe that.
Yes.
Even with this podcast, for example, if I attached the success of my podcast by how many downloads I got.
Yeah.
Can I get honest with you, Joanna? I have no fucking idea how many downloads this podcast has, because that's not the metric of my success with it. Exactly. Not even an ounce. Nope. Now, does that mean I don't want to not grow it, or I don't want to make impact? Absolutely. Is it my focus of success and definition? No, my focus of success is, you know what? I have a platform in which to connect with amazing people, in which to be able to impart tools.
Yep.
I'm a winner. Already done. Check that box. Like, it's all good.
Absolutely. Because that's, when you're making a difference in somebody's life, I mean, there's no greater joy than that. Right. and just getting present to that, which you're already doing, right? It's like, it could, right? It could move you to tears.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I've got a question about the inner critic, because I do this exercise with clients at times, and I'm curious your opinion on it. And have you ever done any work like this in which you kind of do a turnaround with the message of your inner critic? Because I've had this relationship with my inner critic, and mine tends to come in the biggest form of my weight. I used to be pretty overweight when I was younger. So in my mind, I'm very easily still like that fat kid. And I wasn't even a kid. It was more like high school and college. And I lost about 70 pounds from my highest to my lowest.
Wow.
And so I have a loud inner critic when it comes to judgment around the size of my thighs or my stretch marks or my cellulite, like all the things, because I'm a human being, right? And I don't have a great metabolism. So it's easy for my inner critic to have a field day with all that.
Yeah.
So one of the ways I've tried to connect with my inner critic in a way that's healthy is to get curious around what is the underlying message that my inner critic is trying to tell me. Because because I said I'm nitpicky on language, when I talk about communication, like in order for language in my mind to be effective or communication, we need the right words, but we also need the right tone of voice. We need the right body language. We need the right volume, right? Because any which one of those that's not aligned is going to have your communication miss the mark.
Yep.
So I've gotten really curious with this idea to say, well, what if my inner critic actually wants to have my back, but has like the wrong words and a terrible delivery and like a really mean tone of voice? So if like the message my inner critic is telling me is, you shouldn't have eaten that, or why aren't your jeans fitting? It's, whatever that message is. Yeah. And if I take that at face value, then I lower my self-worth, right?
Right. Sure. Yeah.
But when I can get curious to say, okay, what's actually underlying my inner critic is an intention for me to be within the value of me being healthy.
Yes.
So what if I get curious about the value underlying my inner critic and just try to have compassion for the fact that delivery is entirely wrong?
Yeah.
Have you done work with that where you like turn it around to see how can I reframe this message?
So the work that I do, it's similar, okay, but it's a little different, okay? So what I distinguish is your old automatic mind versus your newly rewired mind, right? So with regards to, let's say, something like weight, right? So when it is your inner critic that's speaking to you about your weight or your eating or whatever, okay? Remember, we've got this never-ending message, okay? So usually, and again, we could take just weight as an example. Usually your inner critic has some sort of attachment to, you need to look like this. And if you look like this, you're enough. And if you don't look like this, you're not enough, right? Or this is what health is supposed to look like, and this is what, unhealthy looks like, or right, or
right,
vegetables are good and chocolate cake is bad, or whatever it is, right? And so now, if you're stepping into a bigger vision, okay, so like for you, your vision, right, that would inspire you and call you forth is, I want to be a healthy, vibrant woman, right? And not just now, but, when I'm 85, I want to be able to, sit on the floor with my grandchildren, right?
Right.
That's a vision, okay, that's going to call forth a way of acting, right? Choosing to be healthy, but from a place of forwarding what's possible, as opposed to who you should be and who you shouldn't be and who you're supposed to be. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, 100%. And so, the language I put around that is to stay values driven, right? Because if my value is to feel healthy and my value is to feel, whether it's confident or comfortable in my own skin or accepting of, my body in whatever which way, the value. So my inner critic would normally be like, oh my God, I can't believe you just ate that cookie.
Right.
Right. My value would say, on the one hand, if I were to make the choice to eat the cookie, the value part for me would be like, is eating this cookie in alignment with the value of being healthy? Maybe it is, maybe it's not.
And maybe it is, right? Because if you like, if I love chocolate chip cookies, which by the way, I do, right?
Yes.
So sometimes if I'm going to eat an amazing gooey chocolate chip cookie that it was homemade and just came out of the oven, right? That is actually honoring myself.
Yes.
Right. So we're saying very much the same thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
The language is a little different. The language that I use is, are you being driven by your inner critic, or are you being driven by your vision?
I love that.
Yeah. And your vision is intentional. Your inner critic is just automatic.
And would you agree that our vision also has to be fluid?
Oh my gosh, absolutely. Because, you know, and you might be able to relate to this, because I know we were talking about journeys, right? And, you know, my journey is forever evolving and growing, right? So many people think, well, I have to know exactly what I want, exactly what I'm creating, exactly what I'm designing. And then once I know exactly what I want, that's when I'll take the action. And I think that it is in our action, right? Like we might even just have a vision. Okay, I don't know what my dream is. I don't know, you know, exactly what I want to create, but I know that I want to be living life, loving myself, right? Okay, so what's the very next step that might be in alignment with loving myself, right? And if you, like, let's say you spend day after day after day after day loving yourself, loving yourself, loving yourself, taking actions, then all of a sudden you're in the shower, right? And it comes to you like, you know what? I think I'm going to go on LinkedIn and, you know, or whatever, right? And then you see a job opening. That's how life unfolds. We don't have to have it be such a clear script of where we think it's going.
Well, and I could be the first to tell you that I achieved that. And then going back to my example of weight, and of course, this is, you know, there's no better number than another, right? But I'm not even 5'2". So this is just my experience of being in my own body frame. But at my highest weight, I was 181. And my lowest was 109. Now, one would have thought at 109, I made it. And guess what? Was not happy. So like, even when we have like this attachment to a particular goal, to think that when we get there, our inner critic is going to feel satisfied. Nope, that wasn't the answer either.
Never. And so
I think this fluidity is a really important piece to understand. Wait, what is at the root of that? Yeah. Because at the root of that, I wasn't loving myself even then, right? Externally looked great, but it wasn't, you know, alignment.
It's being present.
Yeah.
Right? It's, you know, if you think about that automatic mind, it's either rooted in the past or it's looking at the future.
In a fear-based way too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Right? And then it convinces us that we've got to control all of the stuff that we have no control over to prevent, you know, things from going the way that our inner critic fears that they might.
Yeah.
And, you know, I love asking this question, right? To consider for everybody that's listening. You know, if we think about how much we've been worried about for our whole lives, right? That's that automatic mind, all the fear. How much of it has actually occurred? And if it did occur, we handled it completely differently than we thought we would anyway.
Yeah.
Right? And then even if we think about the most extraordinary things that have happened to us, like the greatest things that have ever happened to us, we really didn't have all that much to do with that either. Right? Like, in other words, it happened, so, you know, it was probably 10 steps ago that led to this, that led to this, that led to this. we try and control so much, and we don't recognize that really all there ever is to just be present, love and honor yourself, right? Be in the flow, and just take the next step.
I love that. And it's so simple and yet so profound.
Yeah.
And that's why people like you and I are in business.
It's true.
Because it's not easy to do.
Well, it's not easy to do. And what I love is that you and I, we are walking the walk.
Yes.
We're not just talking the talk, right? We're living this life, which is why people resonate so much with us, because we're not sitting there telling you, oh, well, we've already achieved it all. Right? No, we're on the journey with you.
Oh, yeah.
We might just be a few 100%. Steps ahead. Yeah.
100%. Yeah, there's so much that I think this is a really powerful conversation to be having right now at the beginning of 2021, because I think as soon as the calendar turned, people are like, oh, thank God we made it. We're in the clear. Oh my God. Like, it's like, no, you guys, like the world doesn't work like that. The universe does not know the calendar just changed the date. The pandemic is not cleared. You know, God knows our politics are still a work in progress, and our social and racial matters have eons to go to get there. So like, yes, we made it through there, but let's just continue to be mindful and aware.
Exactly.
Because I saw way too much going on, I'll say mostly on Facebook, of people being like, oh, okay, thank God that's over. It's like, I'm sorry to hate to break it to you guys. I don't shoot the messenger here, but like, no, nothing is over except for that calendar date.
That's right. Listen, we were in unknown and uncertainty before 2020. And everything that happened just brought now we really saw like, oh, I really thought I was in control. I was never in control.
No.
It's an illusion.
Yeah.
So it's our ability to just be in the face of the unknown and the unpredictable, right? And just keep being present.
And that is so scary for so many people, because the unknown tends to equal fear.
That's right.
And one of my aha moments on my journey was recognizing it was actually in the unknown where possibility resided.
That's beautiful. It's true.
Because I had the known. Everything I had was known. And guess what?
Right.
I wasn't fulfilled.
No. If we can sit in the discomfort of the unknown and just take the next step, life will just unfold in front of us
with a lot more ease. Yes,
absolutely. Because all we ever have is the very next step. We don't know what 5 steps from now is going to bring. We just take the next step.
So in wrapping this up, Joanna, what would you say if people were to responding like, yes, but wait, I don't know what the next step is?
Yeah.
What would you say to people who are listening right now of like, okay, but in absence of knowing the next step, try this?
Yeah. So in absence of knowing the next step, just get quiet and still, right? And just listen to what I will call like, it's your inner guidance. It's your inner wisdom. It's your authentic self that always, by the way, always knows.
Yeah.
And here's a question just to leave people with, right? To access that, right? If you weren't afraid, if you knew it was all going to go the way that you wanted it to go, what would you do? And that'll give you what the next step is.
Yes. It's amazing. I one of the things that I did once was I was guided in a future self meditation.
Mm-hmm.
And it's actually, I put that in the new gratitude book that I just wrote. And in fact, I recorded all the meditations that are in the book so people can be able to download the guided meditations. But one of them is a future self meditation. And it was an incredibly impactful process to go through of what would your future self tell you and guide you and let you know, basically, it's all going to be okay. Like how would your course shift knowing And I think it's such a beautiful question to ask.
Yes.
Because in absence of that, we're stuck in fear. And then that old story, that old tape just keeps on replay.
Exactly. I love that. I actually am gonna download that meditation and listen to that. That's wonderful.
Yeah. Joanna, I seriously, I adore you. I could talk to you for hours. You and I are so aligned in so many ways. It's so fun to have this platform to connect with these like-minded souls.
Absolutely.
And yet I even forget the amazing impact we're having, because I get so tuned into the conversation of it being personally fulfilling, but yet there's so many people right now who are so grateful for this conversation. So thank you so much. How can people find you? How can they get your book? What can they do to learn more about you? Where can they follow you? All that good stuff.
Yeah, great. So my book is on Amazon and it will be available on Audible as of February 2021.
Awesome.
So the book is the Dethroning Your Inner Critic, the 4-step journey from self-doubt to self-empowerment. My podcast, wherever you find podcasts, is called Dethroning Your Inner Critic. And you can also go to my website, Dethroning Your Inner Critic. I'm on Facebook, Dethroning Your Inner Critic, Instagram.
Very consistent branding. That makes it really easy. I love it. And we'll, of course, have those show notes, those links in the show notes. Thank you so much for coming on. Always so fun talking with you.
Always a pleasure.
All right. Take care and be well.
To continue your journey forward, find Jory Rose on Facebook and Instagram to become part of her growing community. You can also gain access to her meditations, books, online classes, or to sign up for an upcoming retreat. Visit her at joryrose.com. That's JOREEROSE.com.